There is a peculiar silence that speaks louder than words. It is the silence of someone who feels deeply, yet chooses not to reveal it. When a man secretly misses you, it does not always appear in obvious gestures or direct confessions. Instead, it unfolds in subtle, almost paradoxical ways, because what is hidden within the psyche rarely moves in straight lines. The first thing that happens is this: he becomes emotionally inconsistent. One moment, he seems distant, detached, almost indifferent, and the next there is a sudden shift, a message, a reaction, a brief return of warmth. This inconsistency is not randomness, it is the result of an inner conflict. Part of him is trying to maintain control, to suppress what he feels. But another part, the deeper unconscious part, keeps pulling him back toward you. What he cannot express directly, he expresses through contradiction. The second thing that happens is more subtle. He begins to observe you from a distance. Without fully engaging, he becomes aware of your presence, your actions, your absence. He may not speak, but he watches. This is because missing someone does not always create action. It often creates reflection. In his inner world, you remain active. You occupy space in his thoughts, in his imagination, in moments when he is alone. And rather than confronting these feelings openly, he keeps them contained, hidden behind quiet awareness. The third thing is perhaps the most revealing. He tries to distract himself, yet keeps returning to you mentally. He may immerse himself in work, in routines, in other connections, but none of it fully replaces what he feels. Because what is genuine cannot simply be erased. It transforms, it lingers, it resurfaces. The more he tries to move away, the more the memory of you becomes emotionally charged. You become not just a person, but a psychological presence within him. And this is the truth. When someone misses you deeply but silently, their behavior becomes a reflection of their inner struggle. They are not at peace. They are divided between what they feel and what they allow themselves to show. So do not always look for loud declarations. Sometimes the strongest emotions exist beneath the surface, expressed through inconsistency, distance, and quiet return. Because what is hidden is not absent, it is simply waiting, growing, and shaping actions in ways that words never could. Absence does not create emptiness in the way most people assume. Instead, it activates something far more powerful beneath the surface of the mind. When someone is no longer physically present, their image does not disappear. It begins to evolve within the unconscious. What was once ordinary interaction becomes internal experience, and what was once taken for granted starts to gain emotional intensity. The psyche does not respond to absence with silence. It responds by filling the void with memory, imagination, and unresolved feeling. In this state, the connection is no longer limited by reality, but reshaped by perception, often becoming stronger than it ever was in direct presence. This is because the unconscious does not operate through logic or physical proximity. It operates through symbols, impressions, and emotional imprints. When a person is gone, the mind begins to reconstruct them, often highlighting what was meaningful while minimizing what was flawed. This selective remembering deepens the bond in a way that conscious awareness cannot fully control. What is missing externally begins to grow internally, taking on a life of its own. The absence becomes a space where emotions expand rather than diminish. At the same time, this process can create inner tension. The individual may attempt to ignore or suppress these resurfacing feelings, believing that distance should lead to detachment. Yet the opposite often occurs. The more one tries to push away the emotional residue of connection, the more persistently it returns. Thoughts appear unexpectedly, memories resurface without invitation, and even small reminders can trigger a disproportionate emotional response. This is the unconscious insisting on acknowledgement. There is also a paradox within this experience. The person who is absent may begin to feel more psychologically present than when they were physically near. This is not because the connection has changed in reality, but because the mind has begun to engage with it on a deeper level. The absence removes distraction, leaving only the essence of what was felt. In that stillness, the bond reveals its true depth, unfiltered and undeniable. Emotional suppression does not eliminate feeling, it transforms it into something less direct, more complex, and often more revealing. When a man chooses not to express what he feels, the emotion does not disappear from his inner world. Instead, it descends into the unconscious, where it begins to shape behavior in symbolic and indirect ways. What cannot be spoken openly finds expression through patterns, gestures, and contradictions that may seem confusing on the surface but carry deeper psychological meaning. The mind seeks balance, and when emotion is pushed down, it looks for alternative paths to release its energy. This is where symbolic behavior emerges. He may not say that he misses you, yet he reaches out at unexpected times, often without a clear reason. He may engage in small, seemingly insignificant actions, liking something, revisiting old conversations, appearing briefly, and then withdrawing again. These actions are not random. They are fragments of a larger emotional truth, attempting to surface without direct exposure. There is also a tension between control and vulnerability. Suppression is often driven by the desire to maintain control, to avoid appearing weak or emotionally exposed. Yet the more tightly emotions are controlled, the more creatively they express themselves. This can lead to behavior that appears inconsistent or even contradictory. He may act distant in one moment and unusually attentive in another, not because his feelings are unstable, but because they are being filtered through an internal conflict he does not fully understand. Symbolic behavior also allows him to remain connected without fully confronting the depth of his feelings. It creates a safe distance, a way to engage without risking rejection or loss of control. In this space, he can express just enough to relieve the pressure within, but not enough to fully reveal himself. The connection continues, but in a fragmented, indirect form. What is important to understand is that these symbols are not conscious strategies. They arise naturally from the psyche's attempt to reconcile what is felt with what is allowed to be expressed. The more emotion is suppressed, the more intricate and persistent these symbolic patterns become, quietly revealing what words are being used to hide. The shadow is not a separate force. It is the hidden dimension of the self where denied feelings, unacknowledged desires, and rejected truths quietly gather. When a man refuses to consciously admit his attachment, it does not vanish. It descends into this shadow where it gains intensity rather than losing it. What he avoids facing directly begins to influence him indirectly, shaping his reactions, his thoughts, and the subtle ways he remains connected. The more he insists that he is unaffected, the more this shadow carries the weight of what he truly feels. Hidden attachment often reveals itself through unexpected emotional responses. He may react strongly to small things that seem insignificant, or feel a quiet tension when your name appears, when your presence is mentioned, or even when silence reminds him of what is missing. These reactions are not deliberate. They emerge from a place he has not fully explored. The shadow does not communicate in clear language. It speaks through emotion, through impulse, through moments that seem out of proportion but are deeply rooted in what has been denied. There is also a tendency for projection. What exists within but is not accepted is often seen outside. He may attribute his feelings to circumstances, timing, or even to you, rather than recognizing them as his own internal experience. In doing so, he avoids confronting the depth of his attachment, yet remains entangled in it. The shadow does not release what has not been acknowledged. It continues to surface in disguised forms, ensuring that the connection is felt even when it is not understood. This hidden attachment can create inner conflict. On the surface, there may be distance, control, or even indifference. Beneath that surface, however, there is movement, an ongoing psychological pull that does not align with his outward behavior. This contradiction is not weakness, but division within the self. One part seeks to detach while another holds on with quiet persistence. Over time, what is concealed in the shadow begins to demand recognition. It appears in patterns that repeat, in thoughts that return without invitation, and in emotions that refuse to fade. The attachment remains active, not because it is expressed, but because it is deeply embedded within the unconscious, shaping everything from beneath the surface. Longing is rarely simple, and when it is not openly acknowledged, it begins to express itself through contradiction. A man who misses you, but does not allow himself to admit it, becomes divided within. One part of him moves towards you, drawn by memory, emotion, and the quiet pull of attachment. Another part resists, holding back out of fear, pride, or the need to maintain control. This internal split does not remain hidden. It manifests in behavior that appears inconsistent, confusing, and at times even opposing. He may create distance, becoming silent or unavailable, as if trying to prove to himself that the connection no longer holds power. Yet, unexpectedly, he returns, through a message, a reaction, or a sudden presence that breaks the very distance he tried to establish. These movements are not calculated. They are the visible expression of an inner conflict that has not been resolved. His actions do not follow a straight path because his emotions are not fully integrated into his conscious awareness. Contradiction also appears in the way he communicates. There may be moments of warmth that feel genuine and unguarded, followed by withdrawal that seems cold or detached. This shift is not necessarily a loss of feeling, it is the reassertion of control after vulnerability briefly surfaces. When longing becomes too close to the surface, he retreats, not because the feeling has disappeared, but because it has become too real to ignore. There is a deeper psychological tension at work. Longing seeks expression, while suppression seeks containment. These opposing forces create a pattern where neither side fully wins. He cannot completely detach, yet he cannot fully approach. As a result, his behavior becomes a cycle of movement and resistance, connection and distance, presence and absence. This contradiction often leaves an impression of uncertainty, but beneath it lies something consistent, the feeling itself. It remains active, shaping his behavior in ways he may not fully understand. What appears as mixed signals is, in truth, a reflection of an unresolved inner state, where longing continues to exist but has not yet found a clear or conscious form of expression. Memory does not simply preserve the past, it reshapes it into something emotionally alive within the present. When a man cannot fully express or experience a connection in reality, his mind begins to retreat into memory as a place of quiet return. In this inner space, moments are revisited, conversations replayed, and emotions re-experienced without the unpredictability of the external world. What once happened becomes something that continues to happen internally, sustained not by reality, but by the psyche's need to hold on to what still carries meaning. This retreat into memory is not always conscious. It often occurs in subtle ways, through passing thoughts, sudden recollections, or an unexplainable sense of familiarity triggered by ordinary things. A song, a place, a phrase, or even silence can open the door to what has been stored beneath awareness. In these moments, he is not merely remembering, he is re-entering an emotional state that feels real and immediate. Memory becomes more than reflection. It becomes participation in something that no longer exists outwardly, but persists inwardly. There is also a sense of control within this internal refuge. Unlike reality, memory does not challenge or reject. It allows him to engage with the connection without risk, without vulnerability, and without the need to confront unresolved tension directly. In memory, he can feel close without having to act, can revisit warmth without facing uncertainty. This creates a space that feels safe, yet it also keeps him suspended between what was and what is. Over time, this reliance on memory can deepen the emotional imprint. The more he returns to these internal experiences, the more they become reinforced, shaping how he perceives the connection and his place within it. The past begins to feel more stable, more defined, and at times even more meaningful than the present. In this way, memory becomes a refuge not because it replaces reality, but because it preserves what reality could not fully contain, allowing the connection to continue existing within the quiet depths of the mind. Clarity belongs to a mind that is aligned with itself, but when opposing emotions exist beneath the surface, that alignment begins to fracture. A man who secretly misses you yet resists acknowledging it does not experience a clear understanding of his feelings. Instead, he enters a state of inner conflict, where different parts of his psyche pull him in opposite directions. One side seeks connection, driven by memory and emotional attachment, while the other seeks distance, motivated by fear, pride, or the need for control. This division clouds perception, making it difficult for him to interpret his own behavior with honesty. In this state, decisions lose their stability. What feels certain in one moment becomes questionable in the next. He may convince himself that he has moved on, only to feel unexpectedly drawn back by a thought, a memory, or a sudden emotional shift. These reversals are not signs of indecision alone. They reflect a deeper struggle between what is consciously chosen and what is unconsciously felt. The more he attempts to impose clarity through logic, the more the unresolved emotion disrupts it from within. There is also a tendency to rationalize. Rather than confronting the true source of his feelings, he may create explanations that feel safer or more acceptable. He might attribute his reactions to habit, curiosity, or coincidence, avoiding the deeper truth that they are rooted in attachment. This process allows him to maintain a sense of control, but it also distances him from genuine self-understanding. The mind becomes occupied with justifications instead of awareness. As this conflict continues, it generates a sense of restlessness. He is neither fully present in the moment nor completely detached from the past. His thoughts circle back repeatedly, not because he chooses to revisit them, but because they have not been resolved. The absence of clarity is not due to a lack of feeling, but to an excess of it, emotions that have not been integrated into conscious acceptance. In such a condition, behavior becomes unpredictable, not because it lacks meaning, but because it is shaped by opposing forces that have yet to find balance within the self.